Welcome back to the channel. This week, Del Rey and Lucasfilm released a bunch of weird previews of their newest anthology series from a certain point of view, this time focused on the Empire Strikes Back movie, arguably the greatest movie and most favorite of most fans of the saga. And for those of us keeping up with Lucasfilm's releases in the publishing realm over the last 5 years, I don't think there's any confusion over what that certain point of view is. We're not going to look at all 40 stories, but we'll take a look at a couple that to me are pretty concerning. Toward the end, we'll look at an example from the original A Certain Point of View anthology that was based around A New Hope, and it involves an author that was in the news last week for some lying and racist activity. First, we can take a look at the website of Del Rey, which is owned by Penguin Random House. Number one, this motherfucker is $31 on Amazon. That's a lot of money for a book that, quite frankly, features inexperienced and not well-established authors. So we go down here, we see some of the names on the list. Our friend Daniel Jose Older, who has done a lot to fuck up our favorite franchise over the last several years. We've got a few holdovers from the pre-Disney era, John Jackson Miller and Jason Fry. But we've got a lot of other names in here that we've come to know due to their efforts to destroy our characters. Alexander Freed, we've got Delagla Dawson, I saw the name earlier, where is it? Amy Ratcliffe, Christy Golden. So you have these names that have been writing a lot of the Star Wars books that have been deconstructing and flat out destroying the franchise over the last several years. We can check out the publisher's summary here that says, on May 21st, 1980, Star Wars became a true saga with the release of The Empire Strikes Back. In honor of the 40th anniversary, 40 storytellers recreate an iconic scene from The Empire Strikes Back through the eyes of a supporting character. From heroes and villains to droids and creatures, From a Certain Point of View features contributions by best-selling authors and trend-setting artists. So another thing we want to point out here is that it says all participating authors have generously foregone any compensation for their stories. Instead, their proceeds will be donated to First Book, a leading nonprofit that provides new books, learning materials, and other essentials to educators and organizations serving children in need. Let's go ahead and take a look at that organization because they're not as innocuous as they sound. So if you scroll down on their About page, it says First Book is rooted in diversity, inclusion, and togetherness, and we aim to apply our expertise to join the fight for racial equity. There's one of those key words. And then you pop over to their Marketplace page and you see the kind of material they're distributing to children. You've got a lot of stuff about diversity and inclusion. All kids need diverse books. V is for voting. Yeah, because a 10-year-old needs to worry about voting on top of all the other stuff they have going on in their life. We know what this organization is about based on their websites, and quite frankly, that Del Rey and Lucasfilm are supporting them is disgusting. There are plenty of other organizations they could donate to that are more apolitical in nature, but we know what their agenda is. As for examples from the anthology, the first one we'll take a look at is the Obi-Wan one. The tweet from Del Rey says, "The problem with Skywalkers is that they care too much. Obi-Wan knows. He's always known." And the expert is an apparent quote from the Jedi Master that says, "I had hoped that dying would be enough to untangle me from the Skywalker family's issues. And yet here I am again, Obi-Wan Kenobi, one with the Force and still the only thing standing between a Skywalker and an impulse decision that could have galactic consequences." So here we have Obi-Wan on his period, totally out of character. He was never anything but helpful and a mentor to Luke, and Anakin for that matter. The author of this story, Mackenzie Lee, is new to Star Wars. In the Q&A section on Goodreads, she answers a question as to why she wrote a certain book. Part of the answer was, "And my frustration with the fact that both Western historical narratives and said tropey adventure stories were mostly populated by straight, white, cis people." We can just stop there because obviously she fits the mold of the current Disney Lucasfilm authors. Next up is John Jackson Miller's Ray story. Ray Sloan, that is, not the Ray we all know, unfortunately. He says in his tweet, "When Darth Vader thinks you failed him, you can run, or you can be Ray Sloan." Let's go ahead and take a look at the original tweet here. It's an excerpt from the book, and it's an exchange between Admiral Piet and Ray Sloan. "Orders? You're here because you've ignored orders." Piet's whisper grew louder. "Lord Vader is not interested in your excuses or apologies, and neither am I." Ray Sloan steeled herself. "I make no excuses, and I never apologize." Stunning and brave. The last story preview I want to take a look at has an author that's been covered well by my friend Ichibaka. His link will be in the description. I don't know about you, but I couldn't wait for the story of Guy with Box walking between Han and Leia. Meet Chase Wilsore, kitchen boy, calf runner, box carrier, absolute disaster. If you take a look at the original tweet, here is an excerpt. Chase grips his crate tighter and steps right into the scant space between them and ignores the rising argument behind him. "You could use a good kiss," Captain Solo bellows. It echoes throughout the corridor. "The absolute nerve." So here we have yet more destruction of Han Solo, one of all of our favorite characters from the original trilogy and the Star Wars saga in general. So now we want to go back and look at one of the weird stories from the A New Hope from a certain point of view, and it's by Madeleine Roux, or as we like to call her, Madeleine Roux. She was recently discussed at Disney Star Wars is Dumb by Ichibaka and Ryan from RK Outpost, both good friends of mine, and their links are in the description. In the first excerpt we'll look at, it says, "As an advisor, Visaya was so important to her that Breha often joked that losing her would be like cutting off a hand. She had even had matching rings made for them. Simple little silver bands they each wore on their right index fingers." I guess we don't really need to guess where Madeleine was going with that one. And of course Madeleine couldn't pass up an opportunity to make a man look weak. On this page it says, "Bail had fallen to his knees. What little of his strength remained had only lasted until he could deliver that message. It falls to you now." That last part was his wife thinking. Later, "I will not accept any report until I have seen the wreckage with my own eyes." She nearly demanded to know what exactly the Senate was doing about it, but remembered that they were alone in this, lost in an unfamiliar wilderness. Nodding, Bale reached for her, and with shaking hands, she helped him from the ground. Now, you can take an excerpt like that and dismiss it as being innocent and incidental, but the politics, the identity politics that Disney Lucasfilm injects into their publications ranges from the subtle to the avaricious. All of these authors working on this project are, as we mentioned earlier, working for free. Even the regular authors that work on Disney Lucasfilm projects are probably not paid very well, and they see working in this universe as an opportunity to inject their own views and agendas. This book is going to be shit, just like most of the stuff that Disney Lucasfilm puts out these days, if not everything. We can't wait for it to come out just so we can see the details of how big of a raging dumpster fire this is going to be. We'll see you next time.